using, distorted and double meaning language. And they let them start because it looks very progressive to have a black studies or African American studies or women's studies or gender studies. It looks very progressive to have these departments. Often
I mean, the only explanation would be wokeness, why anyone would want to learn about any of those topics whatsoever. Yeah, who wants to learn about women? Who wants to learn about African American studies? No, absolutely not. Not unless it was thrust upon us. If it was part of this Marxist conspiracy theory, as you say. All right, I haven't seen James Lindsay in a while, so let's see what James Lindsay is up to.
Critical theory is not a bunch of ideas. It is a cult. Critical pedagogy is cult indoctrination. There's no other way to see it. We're worried about K through 12. This is a very different situation. These are children. Children do not think the same way as adults. You may forget that.
You may have forgotten James Lindsay. We haven't watched him in a while. He's kind of dropped off the radar. No one really cares about him anymore. He's the guy who always looks like he's about to poop himself or has pooped himself and is just hoping no one else finds out, just kind of thinking that is this gonna slide again? Yeah. He's got that perpetual face, though.
There you have an authority figure telling them these things. We're not operating in a field of, open debate. The marketplace of ideas doesn't exist for 7-year-olds. It just doesn't.
Mathematician, writer, and Twitter provocateur James Lindsay has his sights set on woke academia. He's going toe-to-toe with the organizations coming after your kids.
Is he also conducting? What is this compilation? Okay, so some of these I know. He's the one who's obsessed with groomer, by the way. He got roasted on Twitter so hard because he would call every single thing a fucking groomer. He used to call breakfast cereals Fruit Loops. He was calling Fruit Loops groomer cereal. He called a breakfast cereal a groomer. He also went really hard after me and eventually blocked me when I started pointing out how he's got a lot of weird ties to the Nexium cult members, Inner Circle, Nikki Klein. What's going on there? She taught you everything you know, James. Don't forget about it. Come on, this is a part of our history, a shared history. Also, who are you conducting, James? What's going on here? Wokeness, critical race theory, African American studies, my God, trans ideology, gender ideology, it's all here, all together.
A former liberal, Lindsay started his career writing books in support of atheism. Then, in 2017, his writing veered in another direction entirely. He, with 2 others, wrote 20 fake papers for submission to peer-reviewed scientific journals. The papers featured purposely absurd topics.
Are you proud of this accomplishment? We got a bunch of fake academic papers published. Yeah, because we care. Because wokeness and truth, cancel culture, it's there. You'll figure it out.
Woke topics like rewritten passages of Mein Kampf in support of feminism and rape culture amongst dogs in public parks.
The reviewers are worried that we didn't respect the dog's privacy. That's the concern.
6 of the papers.
So you're trolls. This is internet trolling. You're doing internet trolling, but you're doing it at academia. Because you're coming from an academic perspective. And then, of course, we're supposed to take any of this seriously. Cool. You certainly got them. Certainly showed the academic community that you were able to get fake papers published. Good job.
Were rejected, but a surprise.
Sorry, 6 of the 20, I believe. 6 of the 20. Not 50%, but, it's still pretty high, higher than it should be.
7 were accepted. 7 more were held up under review until the ruse was discovered. The stunt became international news, demonstrating how willing today's scientific community is to accept false narratives, so long as they are...
Well, actually, it kind of proved that the majority were willing to be accepted, but some of them did get through the cracks. That's true. You do get that one.
Politically fashionable, no matter how absurd the premise. After that experiment, James Lindsay co-authored the best-selling book, Cynical Theories, How Activist Scholarship Made Everything About Race, Gender, and Identity, and Why This Harms Everybody, as well as Race Marxism, The Truth About Critical Race Theory and Praxis. His latest book zeroes in on children's education, as he details exactly how the sector has been injected with Marxist thinking throughout the last 70 years. The book, The Marxification of Education,
He's rebranding and repackaging racism. He's using some words that normies haven't picked up on yet, so it all sounds really high level. It all sounds incredibly academic. Yeah. Oh my word, what is this? The Marxification of Education. Oh, the critical Marxism and the theft of education by A1 James Lindsay. Interesting. All right, well, tell me more. This seems, whoa, is that a communist symbol or is that a swastika? It's hard to tell.
Paulo Freire's Critical Marxism and the Theft of Education is available right now. In this episode, James explains the key moments that have devastated our education systems. We discuss the shocking curriculum the UN handed to the United States. We uncover the leading education organizations founded in New Age ideals and more. We explore the radicalization of children, the redefinition of words like democracy and phrases like social emotional learning, and how you can easily spot woke ideology in your or any kid's classroom.
Like, yeah, it's funny, But like part of it also really fucking sucks because like what the right sees as wokeism or woke or being woke, like what human decency, that it compassion, not thinking people should be treated differently because of the color of their skin, because of a melanin quantity, like that stuff. Okay, yeah, then yes, I am woke. I'm woke as fuck, and I recommend other people get fucking woke, because like a lot of this leads in the opposite direction to fucking fascism. Yeah, but like everything you don't like is woke now. Everything. It's like, oh, they're teaching this history of the United States, and apparently this entire country was built on the genocide of Native Americans and then the enslavement of black people in Africa and African countries, and then brought over here as part of the North Atlantic slave trade, and that perpetuated for hundreds of years. And this is a gruesome and bloody history of colonialization taking place. And it's like, yes, I mean, that's what happened. That's just history. I don't think that's offensive unless you are some kind of weird, like, I want to be a white colonizer in the modern era. Well, then, yeah, maybe you might be offended to that as it is, I guess, effectively calling it out as being barbaric, abhorrent, bad. Like, we shouldn't do that anymore. So, yeah, I guess maybe that's offensive. Maybe that's a little bit offensive to you to teach in schools. I mean, I don't know people who aren't white supremacists who would be offended by the history of white supremacy and teaching the history of white supremacy, and then recognizing it as like a bad thing, as being like, oh, so let's learn about World War II. Cool. Nazis, not good. They're bad guys. They did bad things, you know? Mussolini, bad. The fascism in Italy, bad. Yeah, the fascism in Spain, very bad. Francisco Franco, not a good dude, doing bad things, you know, the suppression of a lot of fucking different communities, marginalization, cleansing, trying to remove the Catalonian people. Like, it's just like, these are all bad things, not great.
And things that broke out with the kind of critical theory revolution, and then it kind of petered out. People didn't like violence. People don't like riots, as it turns out, and they lost their momentum for the revolution. And they said, you know, we're going into the institutions. So from the early 1970s, there's been a concerted effort to get into education, to solve what they call the problem of reproduction in communist talk. And the problem of reproduction is that we send our kids to school to become educated. We define educated to mean, well, what we're going to do is teach you to do the things to make you successful in society. You can get a good job, you can live a good life, you can navigate, you know, figure out how to balance your checkbook or whatever the old sayings are. We're going to teach you how to participate in society successfully as a professional.
I'm on 125, man. This is so fucking boring.
Where it remains today, which is everywhere. And so they had that, and we can talk about those, you know, and those happened in 2015 primarily, initially. It's something called the Every Student Succeeds Act is very relevant to kind of why it blossomed so quickly in the last maybe 5 to 10 years.
So I'm gonna go through every piece of that because it seems like there are 3 pieces of it that we're talking about here. One is the theory, there's this radical education theory.
What's this? Don't share pictures of James Lindsay hanging out with Nikki Klein of the NXIVM cult? What are the inner circle members of the NXIVM cult? The human trafficking pedophile cult? What are you talking about? What's this say? I taught him everything he knows, says Nikki Klein. Interesting. Well, I mean, I would say this was nothing if it wasn't for the fact that they also took a road trip together. So there's that. Yeah. I wonder if there's more. Ooh la la.
The other question is why these institutions caved so quickly, right? What were sort of the holes in Western civilization that allowed for the entire superstructure to fall within a matter of, it sounds like, a decade or 15 or 20 years? And then I want to get to the last piece that you mentioned there, this sort of radical shift starting in 2015 legally. So why don't we start with what the actual kind of theory of Freire is? What exactly was he promulgating?
Oh, so Freire's educational theory can be summarized very simply, which is that true education is political education. So he says, you know, cutesy phrases like you always hear in sort of, as they call it, dialectical thought. He says cutesy phrases like all education is political. You know, you always hear teaching is a political act. These are kind of almost thought-terminating cliches that you hear out of kind of Marxist-type educators or woke educators. And what he actually means is that a true education is a political education. And so it's not enough to learn the content of the academic material, to learn mathematics, to learn to read, to learn to write, to learn history. You have to learn also the context of your lives. And in fact, what he devised, so this actual pedagogy, is that he devised a scheme by which you use the academic material as an excuse to have the political conversation with the children or the students. And then the political conversation is done in a particular way that he gives a name, conscientization, to awaken a consciousness of the real conditions of their lives politically. In other words, to bring them to a critical Marxist consciousness. And then allegedly, and sometimes this is...
A critical Marxist consciousness. Why specifically? All right. Conscientiation is a neologism coming from the Spanish word concienciación. It conveys the idea of developing, strengthening, and changing consciousness. It was created in the field of education, specifically of adult education in the early 1960s, producing at the same time a new concept of consciousness. Brazilian educator Paulo Freire was one of the first to spread its use, although at the time, Alviro Vieira Pinton and a close colleague was producing ideas very near to those of Freire introduced in his first work, Education as a Practice of Liberty, in its English tradition. Freire provided the first definition of a concept of conscientiation, linking it to social sciences and to participation modes of practice, and to the concept of liberation of a daily task to be carried out by any single person. By the mid-1970s and early 1980s, critical theories developed in the field of psychology using concepts of consciousness. Well, I mean, I don't detect errors yet.
Borne out, sometimes not. Political means more than one thing. There's kind of like layers of political thought. There's the substrate kind of, we make some basic assumptions about what it means to be human, about how the world works, how we're going to interact in the world, and what kind of a political organization our society has. And then there's we're going to impose a very specific political program as though those two things are the same thing. Kind of an open and free or liberal society politic is you can be whatever political orientation you want, but under this, there's only one right way to be political.
So you mentioned the word conscientization.
It's hard to say. But I had to practice.
Yeah. So what does he mean by that? It's the way you phrased it before. It almost sounds like consciousness raising in a cult.
That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. It's the awakening of a cult consciousness. And the cult here is critical Marxism or critical theory. Gottesman, actually, who I mentioned a moment ago, who wrote The Critical Turn in Education, in the very first page says, "You've heard of critical theory. We should call it critical Marxism." Like, let's just say what it really is.
All right. Let's listen to woke GPT for a second. All right. See what woke GPT has to say about this topic. Paulo Freire, a Brazilian educator and philosopher known for his influential work on critical pedagogy. His main points on education revolved around empowering individuals, promoting social justice, and challenging oppressive systems. Sounds like a monster. Here's some key ideas associated with Freire's educational philosophy. Problem-posing education. Freire advocated for an educational approach that encourages critical thinking and active participation. Monster. He argued against traditional banking models of education where students passively receive information. Instead, he promoted a problem-posing approach where students and teachers engage in dialogue, questioning, and critical reflection. Monster. Dialogue and conscientiation. Freire emphasized the importance of dialogue in the educational process. He believed that through dialogue, students and teachers can construct knowledge, challenge assumptions, and develop a critical awareness of their social and political realities. Monster. This process, known as conscientiation, helps individuals recognize and overcome oppressive conditions. Liberation and praxis. Freire's ultimate goal in education was liberation. He believed that education should not only provide individuals with knowledge and skills, but also empower them to transform their lives and society. He emphasized the need for praxis, which combines action and reflection to bridge the gap between theory and praxis to bring about meaningful change. Fucking monster. This fucking abomination. Now I know why he's so horrifying to someone like James Lindsay, who's like listening to this kind of stuff. He's like, what? Listening to others, communication, understanding the world around you, changing, trying to enact change through praxis. What is this disgusting shit? Contextualization and relevance. Freire emphasized the importance of contextualizing education within the lived experience of students. He argued the education should be relevant to learners' realities, cultures, and social context. Monster. By connecting education to concrete experience of students, it became more meaningful and effective. Critical consciousness and social transformation. Freire believed that education should foster critical consciousness, which involves analyzing and questioning social, economic, and political structures of power. He argued that by developing critical consciousness, individuals can become agents of social change and work towards creating a more just and equitable society. Okay, I've learned a lot, but now I want to know, what was Paulo Freire's main points about education, and give the answer in a Run the Jewels hip-hop song. All right, here we go. Let's see if we have the technology. Verse 1. Paulo Freire, his vision so clear, education's purpose, he made it appear. Problem-posing pedagogy, that's the key. No more baking education, set minds free. Liberation through education, that's the fight. Dialogue and praxis, shining the light. Critical consciousness, let's take control. Transforming society, reaching is our goal. No more passive learning, it's time to engage. Question assumptions, break out of the cage. Conscientiation, minds awake arise. Relevance and context, a new paradigm prize. Liberation through education, that's the fight. Dialogue and praxis, shining the light. Critical consciousness, let's take control. Transforming society, reaching our goal. Freire's wisdom echoes in every word. It's hip-hop's rhymes. His ideas are heard. Run the jewels with the fiery beats and rhymes. We carry the legacy, pushing these times. Break the chains of oppression. Let's dismantle and empower the march. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's not half bad. It's you know, in terms of like, we're learning. This is helping, you know, ChatGPT, or should I say woke GPT, is teaching us things. Paulo Freire's legacy forever alive. It's Run the Jewels anthem. We'll strive, educate, liberate, knowledge to sow. Together we rise, breaking down every foe.
And I think, wow, they just give it away, It's that old meme, domestication.
Okay, so he learned about all this kind of stuff, and he learned a little bit of, and this is good. We're learning some theory. People always complain we don't do enough theory on the show, and I understand. Theory can be very, very dry, so we need sometimes some kind of advanced AI technology, deep learning, deep think, if you will, to be able to transform some concepts of theory into modern run the jewel song, and then we can learn a little bit, get some sugar down with our vegetables, right? But these are very interesting concepts. I can see why they piss off James Lindsay so much, though. Why he would read something like this and see it as a bad thing. Who would see some of these concepts and be like, what, questioning and interacting with other human beings rather than simply learning as a direct result of like, I think that a direct impact upon individuals in which they learn is going to be affected by if they are having interactions with other people. Do you get to go back and forth? Is there a feedback? And that helps you make long-term memories, take short-term memories and turn them into long-term memories. Absolutely good stuff. I don't see.
Of,
you just
the
see
lower
faith?
classes, et cetera.
Okay.
And then you make it personal to them to actually activate and radicalize them, which is, in fact, a cult in the
So that's
60s
where
to
the
appear
cult comes in.
progressive. Frankly, and they wanted to be on the vanguard of this. We're the elite. Richard Dawkins said this a long time ago. It's funny to bring up Richard Dawkins now. But he said, you want to be open-minded, but not so open-minded your brains fall out. Well, guess what happened? They were so open-minded that they did actually let their brains fall out. And they let radicals come in who had no intention of arguing in good faith, using, distorted and double meaning language. And they let them start, because it looks very progressive to have a black studies or African American studies or women's studies or gender studies. It looks very progressive to have these departments. Often
I mean, the only explanation would be wokeness, why anyone would want to learn about any of those topics whatsoever. Yeah, who wants to learn about women? Who wants to learn about African American studies? No, absolutely not. Not unless it was thrust upon us. If it was part of this Marxist conspiracy theory, as you say. There's something, it's called the Cultural Marxism Conspiracy Theory. I've seen it somewhere before. The term cultural Marxism refers to a far-right anti-Semitic conspiracy theory which misrepresents the Frankfurt School as being responsible for modern progressive movements, identity politics, and political correctness. The conspiracy theory posits that there is an ongoing and intentional academic and intellectual effort to subvert Western society via a planned culture war that undermines the Christian values of traditionalist conservatism and seeks to replace them with culturally liberal values. Although there are similarities with Nazi propaganda and the term cultural Bolshevism have been noted, the contemporary conspiracy theory originated in the United States in the 1990s. Originally found only on the far-right political fringe, the term began to enter mainstream discourse in the 2010s and is now found globally. The conspiracy theory of a Marxist culture war proponented by right-wing politicians, fundamentalist religious leaders, political commentators, mainstream print and television media, and white supremacist terrorists, and is described as a foundational element of the alt-right worldview. Scholarly analysis of the conspiracy theory has concluded that it has no basis in fact. Because it doesn't. But hey, James Lindsay has been a big proponent of it for a very long time. And he enjoys repackaging it. He enjoys rebranding. He enjoys being like, well, this isn't a cultural Marxist conspiracy theory. This is actually about a deeply ingrained pedagogy that is invented, of course, by a Marxist philosophy, one that is ingraining itself upon the very children of our society. And they are trying to come after the children after all. And so this is about the groomers and the pedophiles coming after the children. And I want to say that they are part of a larger, let's just say, group of elites. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I see what's going on here. Oh, okay, so this is the old-timey stuff. You're just rebranding the whole thing, and people are taking you at your word for it. Fun. I think James Lindsay has not changed at all. He's just being granted more audience. I don't think there's anything new to reap from James Lindsay's philosophies. He's just doing the same regurgitated, I read the book, here's the concepts, here's why they're scary and terrible, and here's why Marxists are trying to take over the world, and there's a secret cabal that are running the entire world as well.
Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form. Available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
Thank you kindly to our Lord and Saviors Peyton L. Just and Xander Corvus. Without you, we are nothing. And now, a shout out to our Knights of the Square Table. Amazing Flesh, Anna Loves Riley, Adrian McCarthy, DM Rivera, Doug Cady, Everything Important, Hegbard Celine, Izzy Solidarity, La Media Panza, Matthew Scarborough, Multimondi, Nettle, Omni, Peanut Butter Blonde, Political Papi, Quiet 185, Rachel K, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Kubi, Cernicus, Spinach Monster, Stellar Vision, Sebastian Dimmel, Thomas, Trevbot EXE, Lucidry, Words Greenwood, Cheryl Alvarez, Tony Perkins, Thomas, O'Pecker, Travis McClinton, and Victoria Bell. Thank you so much. And a huge shout out to all the other people who make this entire show possible. Without you, it would not exist. If you can support us, please go to patreon.com/theserfs, and even $1 can help unlock all of the little goodies and help make this show entirely possible.